Hey, and welcome to this video. My name is Nina, and today it is here, long awaited, but now it's here. It took me a little while to put together, but here are my design tips. Now, I want to mention before we start that I do think that every single island is so beautiful because you can really make it your own, and the uniqueness will always be more beautiful than following any of these tips. So please do not think that you have to follow any of these tips in order to have a pretty island. Don't forget to have fun with it. But I tried making a really thorough guide that I think provides everything that you need to know to improve your island and something that you can always refer back to if you so wish. We'll go over topics like design layouts and composition, color theory. I will also talk a little bit about my personal design process, and in the end of the video I will also provide you with a couple of very simple designs that you can easily copy and paste onto your island. I will show you a few ways that you can adjust them to your island's aesthetic and your color theme. So what are we waiting for? Let's flop on over and get into our first topic, which will be finding your aesthetic. Now, I think enough videos have been made on the idea of island themes, and I'm not gonna go too much into depth about this. But if you're really not sure what to do with your island, these could be a few hints that might give you an idea of what you could do. So first of all, do you prefer more natural or urban designing? Do you like neutral or bright and colorful tones? Maybe you're feeling inspired by a book that you've read, a movie that you've watched, or you even created a story yourself. You can also base the theme on a season that you pick, or later pick a season that will fit your island's aesthetic. And to make this a bit more tangible, I know that I prefer natural designing. Even when I did my abandoned city theme, it was still very natural because I took the city theme and made it my own by making it very, very overgrown instead of very structured. I know that decorating with flowers, trees, and shrubs is a staple I will always want to fall back to, so I will keep that in the back of my mind when I'm starting a new island. So pick a theme or aesthetic direction that you feel inspired to do instead of trying and following every trend there is, because that's going to make it very difficult to get inspiration for an island after a while. And since we've already kind of talked about it, let's have a look at color theory next. I think this is actually one of the most important things to pay attention to when designing, because regardless of your island's aesthetic, the items you choose, or the layout you decide to go for, knowing how to use color will help immensely to bring any design together actually. In general, I'd say picking one color palette will help you interconnect your different builds throughout your entire island and make it feel more cohesive and therefore improve the flow of your island in the end. Okay, we know that, Nina, but how do I pick a color palette and how do I know which colors go together? Now, color theory is a hefty topic, so let's simplify it for Animal Crossing purposes and let's find a color scheme together that will work for your island. If you're fairly new to color theory, I'd recommend sticking to one or two colors tops in combination with a couple of neutrals like white, grey, brown, or black, because the more colors you use, the more difficult it can be to balance them throughout your designs. Also remember that the season you choose will already come with a set of colors, so just keep that in the back of your mind. But what if I cannot think of any color I want to use? In that case, we can get a bit more theoretical if you want to, and we will just tip one toe into the basics of color theory. So this is a color wheel. Mainly there are two groups of colors that you've probably already heard of. They are warm and cool colors. Essentially, colors are considered warmer the closer they are to the orange, and colors are considered cooler the closer they are to blue. There's a bunch of theory behind which colors can make you feel different things, but I won't go too much into detail. So for example, yellow is mostly a happy, warm color because it could remind us of the sun. As another example, blue feels cold but also can be modern, technical, even magical, which is also why a couple of very cool islands use blue or teal colors. Red, obvious one, love, warmth. Also Christmas or autumn can be associated with red, but also anger, danger, or fire. Now, if you have a color but that's not enough for you, you can add a color or two to the mix to spice it up a bit. So say the color you've chosen was red. So just the red in multiple shades would be a monochromatic color scheme, which means you pick a color and go for different tones of that same color. But adding the complementary color of the red would be green, which is on the exact opposite side of the color wheel, so it's a cool color. Harmonious colors, on the other hand, would be the warm colors surrounding the red on the color wheel, orange and magenta, but you can also opt for yellow, I'd say. But again, I'd be careful. The more colors you add, the harder it gets if you want it to look balanced. And what I mean by balancing color is to position your colors so that every color is represented equally in every part of your design. This also includes wood tones, stone colors, and the colors of any nature aspects that you use in your designs. It can also help to subtly hint different colors on little labels on decorative bottles, a dropped item, or custom design on the ground. All of this will make your design feel a lot more polished and come together a lot more naturally. If you still have no idea after all that technical talk what to do, here are a few color palettes I've used before or think would work, and some aesthetics I think they would suit. I will also include a link in the description box where you can find a website to easily generate the different color schemes and see which colors you could add to a color that you really like. So now that we've chosen our colors, let's flop into the next section of this video, which is going to be custom designs. I've gotten a couple of questions about how I find my custom designs and how I decide which ones to pick for my island, because there are so many good ones, I know that. But today I have 3 essentials kind of for when you're choosing custom designs for your island. The first thing I do is to browse Pinterest and social media to get a grasp of what people have already made. Pinterest is actually my brain source. My brain? Well, you can say Pinterest is my brain. It's my main source when looking for custom designs. I just type in any keywords that I think are related to my theme and just browse. Seeing what codes other people have used for similar aesthetics that we are going for is also a good source for inspiration. Many creators actually credit the codes they are using and their creators in their story highlights on Instagram and their description boxes on YouTube, or have cards or websites listing them all. By the way, my codes that I have and am using currently are on the website that is linked down below, because I do get tons of questions about them. They are linked below. Before going in and downloading everything though, I'd recommend to pick a main pathing that fits your aesthetic. Pick one code that will lead people around your island. This one should be something very versatile that you can easily implement in a variety of builds later. So I'd recommend going for something very neutral in color and texture, which will help it feel more complete in the end. If you want to use in-game pathing, you can also obviously do that, or even layer it with another path code for more visual interest or to help it blend in with the rest of the island better. For example, like I am doing with the light dirt pathing that is in-game, and I layer that with the snow pathing to make it blend around the edges of the path that I'm creating. Now that you've chosen your main pathing, I like to choose 1 or 2 different paths. We can really make use of the 100 design sort that we have now. So this one should be kind of a similar vibe than the first one, but I found that combining or alternating 2 paths that are kind of similar can help your island feel more interesting. Or maybe you've picked a natural dirt path as your main code, but you still want to have some urban areas, so you need a road code. If that's the case, I'd make this, I'm gonna call it the second main path, also rather neutral than too exciting, because it will need to be clear enough to guide people around those other urban areas on your island. And don't be greedy with any of these, as they will be the main paths on your island. And if you ask me, yes, it is definitely worth it to save those 1 tile wide add-ons to your 9 tile pathing. It'll help you immensely with creating dynamic shapes and with making your paths less bulky and flat looking. Now that we have the main paths down and you know how many slots they are taking up in your custom design portal, it's time to have some fun. But hold on, before you start saving all those cute plastic bags and signs, I have one more thing to consider. First, add in 1 or 2 secondary parts. These are codes you can use to break up and mix in with your main pathing, or to lead off from the actual main pathing and into smaller sections of your island. I usually go for wooden planks or some stepping stones, something like that, but you can also do certain tiles for more structured roads or other codes that will match the look and feel of your main paths. Now it is time to have some fun and save whatever we feel like works for our island, and we'll go with our main and secondary paths. I'd recommend saving codes that take up multiple design slots first, for example, blankets, bridges, stairs, water, ISO, pond codes, something like that, and then adding certain flowers, stones, subtle codes that will blend well into the ground that you can put underneath of items or fencing. I often find that if I fill up everything with cute flowers, leaves, and special codes, I will only end up using half of them most of the time. So I'd recommend leaving 4 to 8 slots empty so that you'll have space to add any signs or so for builds you haven't thought of yet. Plus, it will also spare you the pain of going back in after overwriting some of those pesky unused codes, so you won't have those awkward blank white tiles everywhere on your island. You're welcome. I got you, babes. Okay, now let's decide where to start designing. The first thing is obviously to pick a spot for your build you want to do, and the easiest way is probably to start at your island entrance, so where the airport is located, and work your way around the island in a circle until you eventually end up at the airport again. To be honest, I'm not the best with sticking to that rule myself, but I'd like to actually really emphasize on this one because it will help you so much later with interconnecting your builds and improving the flow of your island. I honestly always regret it in the end because I end up having all these cool ideas but no space left to actually build them in. So if still possible, try to add a new build onto the previous one and so forth. And while we're at it, I also got asked if I have any tips on picking a map, and to that I can only say no. The only thing I tend to look for is a reasonable amount of space between the airport and rest services, so I have a bit of freedom to design around my entrance, and a fairly big peninsula. Now that you have an idea of what you want your island's aesthetic and the color scheme to look like, you've chosen all those cute and fun designs, and you're already standing in the empty spot you want to fill up, you're probably tingling with excitement to start decorating. Finally, Nina, Jesus Christ, let's get designing. The key to making any design work is to keep the balance of making it look interesting but still pleasant and not overwhelming to the eye. Now, don't get me wrong, I love me a good cluttercore island. In fact, you will probably consider most of my islands quite cluttered, but there are certain tricks you can use that will make even the most cluttered of islands feel visually appealing. First thing, group items instead of filling single spaces. I know that sometimes you just want an area to be done and move on, and the easiest way might seem like filling in any empty spaces that you have by just adding random items or flowers to them. Instead though, try creating interesting groups of items. That way you create one focal point that's really interesting instead of overwhelming the eye with stuff everywhere. It's also good to use an odd number of elements because it will simply be more interesting to the human eye. Adding height to your builds is crucial if you want it to feel full and complete. I usually like to break up larger areas or flatter designs with the taller items such as trees, buildings, signposts, and obviously some of the new items like the windmills are incredible. And obviously terraforming is another great option to add vertical height. First up, use terraforming to enhance your builds, but don't add cliff simply for the sake of having a cliff there. What I mean by that is you can use cliffs to frame and elevate certain portions of your build. This will again help you to concentrate the viewer's attention to a certain area. You can also add terraforming to the front of a build to add to a view through the corner of your eye, kind of, or the viewpoint of the display, I guess. Be careful to leave enough space though in between the walkway and and any cliffs in front of something, so they are adding and not hiding anything important. I would even recommend walking an imaginary path behind the cliff and marking out where exactly you'll need to walk in order for the cliff to add detail to the view. I actually even really like blocking the area that's too close to the cliff off, which brings me to a few more of my favorite design tips for you today. I found rather recently that I want people to stick to a pathway as they are touring my islands, and blocking off any areas, or for example the beaches, is a great way to guide visitors around your island or to define what people are able to see depending on where they are standing. You can also utilize the half-tile spaces, for example when you want to block off a beach to the front of a build like I did here. That will make it feel less cluttered, but your little character still won't be able to get through. My favorite things to use when I want to block something off is foliage, where I use shrubs and any natural elements. Trees, shrubs, flowers, weeds, and now also moss and vines are always a safe way to fill empty space. Trees are probably my favorite item in the game, if you can say that, because they are so versatile, especially because you can and should utilize the different growth stages, which you can keep them in if you plant a fruit that is not coconut in any of the surrounding tiles, if you didn't know that. This will stunt their growth, and it's a very easy way to add more dimension to an area. Once removed though, the tree will continue to grow, so be careful about that. In my opinion, at least on natural islands, there should be not a single cliff without trees and nature on them. But planting trees on top of cliffs can take a lot of space because Animal Crossing, Nintendo, guidelines, we love them. So you can do this tree glitch, which allow you to put a tree on top of a cliff that you can then break down to a smaller size than the normal required 3x3, so 9 tiles that the tree needs to grow. You also don't have to stunt them when using this glitch, so they will stay in whatever growth stage you plant them in. It also helps to vary the placement of your trees, and adding in different kinds of shrubs and flowers and avoiding to create patterns as much as you can will help to visually fill the spaces in between the trees. Additionally, I would even recommend that if you are planning to plant some trees on a first tier cliff and you have a second tier cliff behind that one, to leave enough space in order to cover the cliff edges. That will help to make it feel a lot more natural, because those naked Animal Crossing cliffs can feel very, very awkward because they do not really look as natural in most cases. And lastly, don't forget about crops and chopped up trees. They are a great way to add some variety, but still keeping it natural, and they also add some color if these colors fit your color scheme, obviously. This is probably an obvious one that everyone always preaches, but make sure to round off as many corners of your cliffs and water spacing. Try to not have more than 2 or 3 tiles of the same next to each other to play it safe. This will help your terraforming to feel a lot more natural and dynamic, except for using cliffs to create buildings, obviously. The same goes for pathing. Not having more than 2 tiles of the same next to each other and avoiding symmetry is going to look a lot more dynamic and less blocky. And winding paths are also a lot more fun to walk through. As I mentioned before, it can also help to break up your pathing with tree stumps in the middle, weeds, flowers, or other custom designs. Think of your pathing as part of your design rather than just a way to get around on your island. So pushing a few items here and there slightly onto the pathing, using dropped items, leaf piles, or scattered papers will again add another texture, break up any larger portions of pathing, but still allow the path to stay walkable. Here it can also be beneficial to create smaller groups of odd numbers of items. Custom design codes or even in-game pathing are a great way to add some details and texture to your designs as well. Flip them underneath fencing items, or you can even just use them as a smaller item. I love doing that and pushing other tiny items on top of the custom designs just by half a tile. That way it is super easy to round up a number of items to an odd one, or even add some finer detail while keeping an area walkable. And now let me show you a couple designs I've made for a bunch of different themes and aesthetics so that you can take them and copy and paste them onto your island. Plus I will also show you a few examples of how you can adjust them to your aesthetics and color palette. Alrighty, so essentially I came up with a design where I exchanged the different items, but all of the layouts are completely the same if you look at them and kind of compare them to each other. So we have a taller item in the middle that in this case is also a bit wider. So we have the storefront or the truck, or we have the clothesline, the construction side. And then to the left side, we have some items of similar height, kind of. We also can use completely similar items like the barrels. And then to the right side, we have the similar layout. So we have an item next to the tall item and one shifted slightly in front of that item, and then another 6 or third item to the right group, if you will, to just give it a bit more detail and not make it look too symmetrical. And essentially you can stretch that to any size, you can add to it, you can turn it, you can twist it however you like. I feel like this is a very good base that you can take and turn into something very elaborate if you want to, or you can just leave it as it is and use it to fill up a smaller transition area on your island, for example. And I think with that, I shall give the word back to outro Nina. So yeah, there we have it, my loves. These were my design tips. I really hope that you found them somewhat helpful. I, for my part, am quite proud of them, to be honest. And I made sure to include everything and any advice that I can give you now. But if you still find something to be missing, please be sure to drop a little comment, because I would love to answer it, and let me know what you think. And yes, I'm going to leave you now. I really hope that you did enjoy this video, and if you did, I would really much appreciate it if you would hit that little like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I would love to see you here. And yeah, take care of yourself. I'm going to see you next time. Until then, and bye-bye.